Here it is, January 2024. Where I live, it's ski season, and that is one hobby I really do enjoy. I got that from my father at a young age, and I really enjoy skiing. I just got some new ski gear, got our kids ski gear, and looking forward to skiing here locally. There's one resort for those of you in Southern California. I live up in the mountains of San Bernardino, so not too far away from Big Bear. One of those resorts, I was going to ski with my son. Really looking forward to that here Friday afternoon, evening. They have night sessions from time to time, so they had one. Looking forward to that. Getting my son all ready to go. And making our way out there. Very excited because again, I've not skied this particular resort myself. Do a lot locally at one of the other ones, but this one I hadn't skied, and so take my son also for the first time in this journey. And in my mind, the story of getting to spend time with my son, getting to ski, doing something I really enjoy together, trying something new together. That's something I'm really into. These are all culminating together, and I'm really looking forward to this. Um, and have you ever had that happen where you've got a really desired story, you've built up this momentum, you've built up this vision of what this could be, you're really getting excited, you're looking forward to it, and then something happens. Well, it wasn't drastic, thankfully, but my son and I were there. We started, and those of you that have not skied before, sometimes getting ski boots on can be a little challenging. So we kind of worked through that a little bit. And my son was a little frustrated, but we got through it. Hey, we're getting there. I got all the ski gear down. I had loaded up my car, put everything on our ski rack, got over there. We finally found parking, narrowed that around, which again, going to a new place and trying to figure that out is always a little challenging. And finally, we're walking through the parking lot, making our way to the slopes. In about, I don't know, 10, 15 steps in. This is in the evening. There's a thing called black ice. It's just hard to see at times. My son unfortunately slipped on that enough to where it fell on his elbow. Didn't Nothing drastic again, but that was painful enough and didn't feel good that ended our ski excursion. So we got as far as the parking lot, and we tried to see if anything would feel better or whatnot, but it wasn't to be. And so through this circumstances, obviously, I wanted to go skiing. I wanted to take my son, wanted to experience this, and it just wasn't going to happen. And so I've done a lot of training and personal development here in myself. And what I work with others is this: how do you change the story when you have a desire story, you have a story that's running, and that you want this to happen, and it doesn't work the way that you want it to? Um, I think this is really important for all ages. Particularly try to expand this to my son or those that I work with in teams. So there's always stories going around. Um, and oftentimes we come up with stories that are not our desired story. And I got frustrated. Fortunately, I was able to adjust and know how to respond positively. So my story quickly changed direction based on my training and ways of being. But if I didn't catch myself, and even there was parts where I didn't at moments started to seep out where there was maybe a little bit of resentment, frustration, with the circumstances of just being what they were. Um, but I recognize if I allowed that story of frustration, um, dysfunction, if you will, if I allowed that story to just let myself go unrestrained and in a way that would do more damage and harm to my son in this particular, he felt bad enough that for number one, he physically, number two, that he didn't feel confident to be able to go skiing or anything like that, and there was no pressure from me in that. Loving him where he's at, working through the situation. Accidents happen, of course. Um, and instead of reacting in a less mature way, and I've had to learn that. It's not something that just automatically becomes natural. We can respond in negative ways. And so, boy, I bring this podcast to you and this thought as I share this story with you is, are you understanding how to shift from the current story to the desired story and process your feelings and emotions? Because honestly, if you're not, and I'm I'm a 50-year-old man, and I've had to work at this really hard. Number one, to even identify my emotions, besides happy, glad, mad, sad, and going deeper with that. And number two, practicing a desired story where there's actually a positive outcome, a win here. And I'm not just talking positivity. I'm actually talking like, I want to go this direction. This is where I want to become. I don't want to stay in this place. Um, and you may or may not realize how much you're doing that, candidly, because unless you're open to feedback, and really seeking it out, people don't tell you these things. They're not going to share you too much with you. If you're fortunate to have a strong spouse, a wife that feels safe and secure and is able to share that with you, you may very well be blessed in that way. But in my experience, many people don't provide that to you. So then you're frustrated. You're in maybe anger, rage, irritation. Um, Oftentimes the stories start to build, where team members let you down unexpectedly. Maybe circumstances come through. You didn't get that sale. You lost that proposal, and so you can go into a tailspin. And so this is one thing I practice with my son and my children and my those that I've worked with over the years, and now clients, is helping them in this area. Because the reality is, if you're not addressing this in a healthy way, you're going to do damage. There's that saying, hurt people hurt people. It's true. And when you're not in a healthy place, oftentimes you start to act kind of in a couple different spectrums. You go into the passive or passive aggressive. I've been there, passive aggressive in particular, or aggressive. Um, and where we really want to get you is into that sweet spot, assertiveness. But this again takes time and focus. What happens is, if you end up doing these things in either extreme ways, it does more damage to the relationship that you're trying to build, trust, and lead yourself, and then to lead others. We're talking about this: steward your business, lead yourself and your team. And so you're not leading from a healthy place. That's where I can give you some pointers here. I can't solve all the problems here on this podcast, of course, but I can tell you I use tools and resources. One that is most powerful that I use is called stack or stacking. And that's a process of going through your existing story, what triggered you, helping you identify there's a trigger. So for me tonight, or when this happened, my son triggered me. Now I've done this so much over the years. I can almost do it in real time, but oftentimes that just takes a lot of practice and focus, because we're emotional beings. We're not logical. We start with emotions, then we can get to logic. But emotionally, we can act like little children, even as grown adults, in the way we act, show up, behave, respond, to those around us, when our desired story, or that our story that we wanted to have happen, doesn't happen, right? So I want you to think about that as we're going through this exercise, or tonight, as I'm sharing with you this idea of what is your desired story. Because if you can't process where you're at and the emotions and the rawness of it, and just be real, I come from a framework of being real, being able to be raw with what's going on. I want to help you convert that to be relevant. Okay? Be transparent and go through these things, get through the rawness, be real about it. Don't say, like I just told you, I was like, "Oh, no big deal." No, it was frustrating in the moment, but I realized that's being real, you know? Drive, almost an hour to get there, get all our gear, everything set up. I spent time beforehand. All these things were building up, and then it doesn't happen. Honor your feelings and emotions, recognize what they are. They're not good or bad. And so identifying those, and particularly men, I'm calling on you guys. Uh, be real. Can you articulate beyond I'm angry or I'm mad or I'm sad? Can you really get to the nuances of this emotions, irritation, frustration, disappointment, depression, even a little sad because all these things kind of swirled up, but able to process them in real time and help be there for my son. Because what would happen in the past is it was all about me. It was all about what they did to me, how I'm feeling, what they're making me do. Have you ever heard little kids say that? You're making me feel bad. You're making me do this. You're making me that. Well, the reality is I can't make you do anything. Ultimately, it's your choice at the end of the day. And so through this tool of stacking, it helps you get clearer on what is your by processing all this. What is this teaching you? What is this telling you? What are you learning from this experience? Because you can learn from any of these experiences, but processing what these emotions are, what this storyline is. And honestly, the storyline, if I kept it, was like, oh, I don't get to go skiing. My son's hurt. There's all these there's a couple different things in there that honestly don't help either one of us in this case. So then it's switching it. It's coming up with a desired story of like, okay, well, for me, I pivoted very quickly into how do I be there for my son, showing love, appreciation, support, kindness for him because obviously he feels bad physically, he feels bad emotionally because now I can't ski, I let dad down, all these things. And so then realizing, no, this isn't I'm processing this for me in real time, but how this can now be I get to spend time with my son. I get to love on him. I get to support on him. I get to provide an environment that is guilt and shame free. I'm not trying to guilt him or shame him. I'm trying to understand and show grace and mercy and understanding. And so doing that takes time. It takes practice. Again, I did not do this. I wasn't raised in a lot in some ways like this. I raised with a dad that I love him, but he had challenges with showing that, and he had a lot of frustrations or anger came up. And for me, that's who's a connector type and wants to reach out. That's like it's stinging, and I pull back and withdraw. So and I beat myself up, and I realized that wasn't helping. And was not helping me, and it wasn't helping those around me. So turning it and shifting it as a desired story as we turned around and we packed up our things and had about a 50-minute drive back home. I had an opportunity just to be there, listen to him if he wanted to talk, share with him, and realize, okay, well, I'm shifting my story now. My short story was what I told you earlier about going to skiing at the end of the week and being there with my son. Well, still getting to be there with my son. I'm still getting to show him love and appreciation and grace for who he is and helping him process himself, his emotions, and being there and showing him an example of how he can be at a young man, a young teenager here. How can you do that for your teams, for your family? And if maybe hopefully you are doing some of those things, but I honestly see a lot of folks don't know how to do that at times. They're frustrated. I talk with many business owners. They're frustrated with the team members are showing up. They're frustrated, they're angry, they're disappointed, they're exasperated, they're tired. There's a lot of emotions that go on with some of these things, and they're like, "Why is this not working? Why aren't we getting the results that we hear?" And so, helping you process those is a passion of mine because it's been so important for me in my own personal growth. That we get you to the other side. Because reality is, if you don't get to the other side, um, you do great damage. Number one, I'll just say physically, you actually hurt yourself because meaning you're taking on stress, your cortisol levels are going up, you are getting anxious, and your nerves are being tested, and this is what leads to burnout. And so we talked about this in previous episodes a bit about burnout, how we address with some of these things and take care of ourselves. So I want you to think about like literally do a body scan. If you've never done a body scan, it's literally just kind of taking a moment, seeing where you're feeling, where do you feel pressure, where do you're elevated, um, uh, stress levels are showing up. And so number one, we do that. We can for me, as an example, I've gone to then extremes. So then you're not calm and focused and clear. You're swinging like a pendulum. So now you're like, well, great. You could make it catastrophize things, making it worse. Well, now they didn't do this, and now this is going to happen, and this is happening. You're creating new stories that don't serve you, and they don't serve the other person, and they start to consume you. If you're not careful, these things now become your new narrative. And think of this as a groove. Like for those of you who remember records, a groove. It goes in, and the more you refine that groove and that narrative, it is much harder to get out of that. Or think of it as building a wall, brick by brick by brick by brick. The story no doesn't serve you anymore. However, you're committed to that story and you're stuck in that story because you feel for some reason it either you oftentimes we feel kind of we're seeking power and control. And so we feel like, well, this gives me some kind of sense of power and control. It really ultimately doesn't. But um, what ends up happening when we start to have those thoughts and ways of being is then we naturally start to manipulate people to almost make that story to be true. And so, again, remember I was talking earlier about passive aggressive. Passive aggressive is a form of manipulation. Um, and if you're not careful, you can start to again guilt people, shame people, and you may not even realize how much you're doing it or the way you're showing it up, the tone, your physical presence around somebody. Um, and again, unless there's somebody that really feels safe and secure and is able to talk with you freely, they're not going to come to you and say, "Hey, I feel challenged by this." I feel that it's very difficult to have those conversations. And that's one thing I do as I help with business owners and their teams create an environment where we can break through those kind of barriers, um, deconstruct the walls, uh, if you will. If you think about, remember talking about a record or a groove, right? Or if you're walking and creating a path in the forest. Um, for those of you in the biology world and restoration, we want to go back and restore those areas, let them come, remove that path, remove that, let it come back, plant native plants or whatnot, get that in there. And we want to create a new way of thinking and a better path, a better groove to make that is actually serves us, puts us in a better place of power, meaning we're actually able to help and serve other people rather than being one that is being controlling, manipulative, um, that is passive aggressive. The words they use are not life giving. They're life taking, if you will. They are wounding words. One of the things I'm passionate about is helping organizations become what I call healing organizations, healing their team, healing their clients, because they come from a place of love and support and appreciation, knowing that they're bringing value and ultimately victory to those that they serve. And that's what I aspire to in Steward Your Business. Um, and so this idea of your current story, your current reality, and what is your desired story? What does that look like? Um, and as you practice this, as you spend the time to create your desired story over and over and over again, and I this is a daily practice for me. At times, it was more than daily, because I wanted to get out of a place of any sense of victimhood, any sense of entitlement, any sense of being offended, because I knew that wasn't going to serve me, and it was putting me in a place of neediness and not power, not certainty. Um, and so I want to really, really encourage you in this, um, that if you're stuck or you know somebody that's stuck in this way or you see them and you're like, I don't know if I can quite talk with them about it, but you could share this podcast with them. Maybe they'll listen and in themselves and say, "Hey, maybe this David's got something here for me," because I see how people respond to me at times. Like that's something you can pay attention to, meaning they may not tell you, but I'm telling you, they're not leaning toward you. They're not turning toward you. They're turning slightly away. The way that they, you can see the countenance on somebody when they're around you. Do they light up? Do they enjoy coming around you? Do they are they open up? Are they opening and they sharing willingly? Meaning you don't have to even pry it too much. Do they naturally know that they can come to you and share with minimal prompting, um, or is it very transactional? Um, so if you're finding, many of your especially your closer relationships with who you're working with, um, who you live with, your spouse, if you're seeing it to become very transactional, then it means they're probably protecting themselves and they're keeping their distance because they don't know how you're going to show up. And so if you can show up with, "Hey, this is how we both win. This is the desired," it changes the whole dynamic. It changes the whole energy. And literally, we went from kind of almost hysterics and feeling, down with my son and working through things like that and realizing that, the pain he was feeling and then coming to a calmness and a peace. And I really appreciated that the maturity that my son showed, the way he was able to process in the moment. It's hard, and especially when you're a teenager, there's lots of hormones and everything else processing. But the way he could turn and adjust and see, okay, and receive number one for me too in a good way, that he knew he was loved, he was appreciated, that this was no reflection of my love. There was no, again, guilt, shame, disappointment upon him. Circumstances are what they are. So that's how I was able to shift the story. And like I said, using tools like the stacking tool and others that have helped me become free from the ways that I was in the past, comes from a place of abundance and giving and caring. And I couldn't do that in years gone by. I was much more of a taker than I was a giver. So I would encourage you as we come into this, is when you're hearing this is the beginning of first week of January 2024, is you know, think about how you can be that giver, how you can show up, and when we can create that desired story that really serves not just us but those around us. Um, and again, taking the time as you're investing. I talked about this on the second episode. You're like coming and listening to this podcast. You're investing in yourself in a new way of becoming, a new way of showing up, and I want to honor you in that and just spending 20-30 minutes with me as you listen to this podcast because I want to pour in and bring you this value. And you're going to hear this week after week here. I'm not going anywhere. We just kicked off. We just launched our podcast officially this week. It's again January 2024. So we have episodes coming. And those of you that have been listening from the beginning, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Your support means so much because I do this because I care. I want to bring value and show you that you can have victory in your life. You can have transformation. You can be liberated from the things that have changed you from the past. And these are all these stories that have held us back. Those are no longer who you need to be anymore. Um, so I'm here, your advocate, David Carr, steward your business here at the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast, leading yourselves and your team. You can become the most intelligent person in the room. You can lead others. You can show them the way, um, and then mentor them, help them become those people as well. That's where I'm taking it on. It's this idea that you give before you get. I want to give you value. I want to help support you in your own journey. And I believe wholeheartedly as we put these things out into the universe, as we care for others around us, we will then be taken care of. And so helping you along your journey is my calling. Help you process these things, these stories, these feelings, these emotions, to get them to where you have a desired outcome, you have clear lessons learned, and applying it to whatever area it might be, whether it's your relationship, whether it's your body, whether it's your spiritual walk, your business. It could be in multiple ways. You can take one of these stories as you learn and you create a new desired story and apply it in a positive way to other areas of your life as well. And this is where you get the multiplying effect and really growth that you've never experienced before. And that's what I love being able to do and helping people is accelerate their growth and transformation to becoming the person they're meant to be, and getting them closer to that every day. So I appreciate you listening here on the Intelligent Human Leader podcast, taking time to invest in yourself. And I welcome you back. And if you like this and you appreciated it, like, share, of course. I love your feedback. And it doesn't have to be good feedback. I love all feedback because it helps me become better. That's my desired story. Is receiving feedback from me means I have the opportunity to become a better speaker, coach, consultant. And those of you who have already listened to the podcast have shared some of that with me, which I truly appreciate. What resonates with you, what is meaningful to you. And I want to help you and continue to come on, listen, come on back. Um, until next time, I thank you so much for you visiting Intelligent Human Leader Podcast. Uh, have a great 2024. Thanks so much.